Two police officers are walking through High Point Shopping Centre in Victoria when just after 9 a.m. a disturbing call comes over their police radios. It's Thursday morning and the lower parts of Australia are scorching hot. I mean, it is over 40, so that's like over 100 in American. Now, this radio call is telling the police officers to head to West Point Bridge ASAP. The incident the dispatcher was describing was so unthinkable, it was so evil, it must have been wrong. I mean, they are definitely thinking this can't be the case. But as the officers are driving the less than 10 minutes there, more calls start coming in from eyewitnesses who are seemingly confirming the initial report. But before we get into this video, I need to put a huge disclaimer at the start of this. This murder story covers the death of a child. And during my researching of this video, I had to stop multiple times. In fact, a crime reporter successfully sued the news outlet she was working for due to PTSD, citing this very case. So if you want to click off the video, I'm not going to be offended. Go and watch a Mr. Beast episode. He's probably in a haunted mansion or crushing a Lamborghini or something this week. But for those of you who are game to continue, well, grab a box of tissues because this is going to be a hard one. And consider subscribing to the channel, you know, all that good stuff. Arthur Philip Freeman was born in Victoria in 1974. He grew up in Geelong, a coastal suburb southwest of Melbourne. His father, Peter, and his mother, Norma, would have another child, this time a girl, which would give Arthur a sister, and this completed the family unit. Arthur would attend Newcombe High School, where he was observed to be a bit of a strange kind of character. Classmates would describe him as being emotionless with very little people skills. He was like socially awkward, I guess. And in hindsight, many years later, some of his classmates would speculate to the media if he may have suffered from Asperger's, which is like a form of autism. It's on the autism spectrum. But it was due to his quirky behaviour, Artie, as he would be called, they nickname him Artie, he would experience a lot of bullying by his classmates and his peers. In fact, you could say school was a bit of a nightmare for little Artie. And although he would be teased and tormented on the daily, the kids knew when they got to a certain point with him to back off, because Artie would, I guess, internalize everything and he'd give them this look like he was about to explode, and according to the kids, it was frightening. So the kids around him, although they're tormenting and harassing him and stuff like that, he never actually fought back, not once. And although this was happening to Artie, he did try his best to fit in, like he played football and tennis, and he was even lifting weights at one point. But in this large group of friends, like there always is in school, Artie was just on the outside of it. He was one of those kids on the outside. So after school, Artie would go to university because he was a very intelligent guy and he would study computer science. And it's while he's at university, his life does turn around because he meets other very intelligent people there and he's introduced to alcohol. And being a social lubricant, it just lightens him up a little, loosens him up a little bit just to sort of mingle with other people. And one of his mutual friends was actually an AFL, an Aussie Rules football player, who would later go on to join the NFL. His name's Ben Graham. He actually went to high school with Artie and university with him, but they weren't friends. They were sort of friends. They were mutual. They had a mutual friend, is probably the only way of really putting it. And it's while in university that Artie develops a few hobbies. One of them, he loves working on cars. That's his passion. But he also loves to play PlayStation. So Artie finishes university in 1996 and he lands his dream job at RMIT Aeronautics in a place called Fisherman's Bend in Victoria. And his job's in the IT department, so he's a computer guy. This is like big brain stuff. And Artie at this stage is known by his friends to stay up literally all night playing PlayStation. Like he'll stay up till 5 in the morning, have an hour or two sleep, and then going to work at 8 a.m. But the thing with his job was, because it was so easy, in his office he'd take a nap during the day. Like he's living the dream, and then he'd finish work and he'd go and do the exact same thing. It would be just 2 years later, when Artie is now 24 years old, he would meet a woman named Peter Barnes. And Peter is in her early 20s. She's working in human resources as a representative, working her way up the corporate ladder, you could say. And the pair, they instantly fall in love with one another, like pretty much straight away. And they move in together really quickly. They rent this little unit in North Richmond, which is a trendy inner suburb of Melbourne. Now, Artie and Peter are polar opposites in personalities. Like, Peter is very extroverted. She's very outgoing, where Artie is more introverted. He sort of keeps to himself a little bit, but he does try, again, like when you go back to his high school, he does try. And Peter really tries to bring him out of his shell and get him to do a lot more stuff outside, which it does work, and I guess it is kind of good for him. So it would be New Year's Eve 1999 when the pair would marry. Now, the interesting thing with this is anyone old enough who remembers 1999 New Year's Eve and the debacle leading up to that, this was Y2K, where the experts, for some reason, thought that when the computers clocked over to 2000, because they hadn't done the internal clock, it was just going to destroy the world. It was going to wipe all debt clean and people's bank accounts, which, I mean, a lot of people were hoping it would happen. It didn't, obviously. But Peter's family found it hilariously funny that she was marrying this computer nerd on New Year's Eve of 1999, on the eve of Y2K. Like, they thought it was hilariously funny. Now, it would only be a couple of weeks later when the newly married couple would uproot their lives and they would move all the way to London in the UK. Artie had secured this really awesome job there, and he was making a lot of money and all these perks that came with the job. It was in IT, and he'd get given skiing trips and boozy lunches, and he's playing tennis every week. Like, how posh is that? So they moved to a place near Lord's cricket ground, which I think Ozzy Osbourne's son, Jack Osbourne, was born near there. I think they may have lived in the similar place to where Jack Osbourne was born. So the Osbournes, man, Ozzy Osbourne. And it's also, by this stage too, Peter gets her own job and she's doing really well as well. So they rent this really nice terrace place near Lord's cricket ground, living the dream, living the swanky London lifestyle. Now, this is where we get to the part of this 2-year sort of thing that happens. There's this 2-year thing that happens. So in February 1st, 2002, so this is 2 years after they moved to London, they give birth to their first child. It's a boy that they name Ben. And to carry on with the 2-year thing, 2 years later, in 2004, February 14th, so it's February again, they give birth to a baby girl that they name Darcey. And to roll with the Februaries and the 2 years, in 2006, so 2 years later again, February 24th, February again, they give birth to their third and final child, a boy that they would name John. Now, this information came from the Age newspaper, so it has to be right. Clearly, like some of my videos, don't always take my word for things, because I get a lot of my stuff from mainstream media and they want to be first, so it's not entirely accurate, so I apologize. But if it is, man, like, that's crazy. We all know what they were doing in May the year before, don't we? And it was spring in the UK, so it totally makes sense. But this is where things for this new family of 5, they start to take a turn for the worst. Peter had become homesick. She really wanted to move back to Melbourne, and she would use the excuse that the schooling system is far better in Australia. And this really sort of upset Artie, because he wants to get his UK residency, which you can only get after 5 years. And at this point, they'd been there over 5 years, so I don't know why he didn't do it earlier, but he wants to get his UK residency, but the decision has been made to move back to Melbourne, and they do that June 24th, 2006. So that was literally weeks away from him being able to get this UK residency. So he's not too happy about that. But at the same time, like, if you're going to move back to Australia, there's no point getting the residency unless he wanted the British passport, which I think you may be eligible for. People in the UK follow me. I'm pretty certain that's how it works. Like 5 years, residency, passport. I lived there for 3.5 years. I didn't stay the 5, and I probably could have got the British passport had I stayed the 5. So the couple moved back to Melbourne, Australia, and Artie struggles to find work. Peter doesn't. She rocks straight into a really good job. So the couple decide that Artie's going to stay home. He's going to be a stay-at-home dad. And he according to a lot the sources I saw, he loved that. He loved being a stay-at-home dad. He loved spending time with his kids. He'd read them books every night before bed. He really enjoyed it. But a part of me feels like, you know, he's feeling maybe emasculated because, like, he was the breadwinner of the family for the longest time. Like, and he was living the dream. He had his dream job. He's making all this money and he's getting all these skiing trips and all these perks that come with the job. And now he's, you know, he's a stay-at-home dad. Not that there's anything wrong with that. So it is a huge change for Artie at this point. So from the outside, Artie appears to be really nice, quiet, almost timid, but he's super intelligent, right? And on the surface, he's calm, he's composed. But underneath the surface, he is boiling with resentment for the life that he now has. Like, I don't think he's very happy with the way things have panned out for him. And he starts becoming extremely moody. And he's having these wild mood swings. You could say violent ones. There's a few incidences that I'll talk about in a minute. But he's having a lot of issues and the couple start having a lot of problems. And it's one of these incidences. It was a scary one for Peter, and her mother was there too. So Artie flies into this fit of rage and Peter's holding little John. John's not even a year old at this point. And Artie grabs John off her. And she grabs Artie's arm and she starts biting it while she's trying to get little John out of his arms. And then her mother starts hitting Artie in the back with a metal pole. Now, for some reason, they thought that he was going to throw the baby in the fireplace. That's what she was worried about. That's what she would later go on to say. Now, I didn't see anything where he said he was going to do that, but maybe he looked at the fireplace, looked at the baby, grabbed the baby, then looked at the fireplace again. Maybe it was more subtle like that, but that was the vibe she got. So by the 23rd of March 2007, so this is less than a year since the family moved back to Melbourne, they separate. The relationship is over and Artie moves out. Artie goes and rents his own little apartment. And I can't help but feel that maybe Peter wasn't very happy with Artie back in the UK. Like, I just, maybe she used the whole schooling system in Australia as better to move back, to be closer to family, because she sort of thought this may go this way. We may end up separating, and I want that support. I could see that being the case because that's pretty common. But nonetheless, Artie moves out and he gets his own place. Now, allegedly, Peter transfers $300,000 out of their joint savings account and into her own account. Now, this sets Artie off and he gets very upset about it. But the truth of the matter is, in divorces, it's up to the courts. They decide on the asset split. So it could be a 50-50 asset split. It could be a 70-30. It all sort of depends on the custody arrangement as to how it's going to go down. And that does, I'm going to make a point of that a little later on, because Artie at this point does have 50-50 custody with Peter, with the children. Now, I don't know if Artie at this point is struggling with the separation, but he continues to wear his wedding band. It's as if he's sort of in denial. And this entire time too, like, he does have more angry outbursts at Peter. It's not super common. Like, it's not so often. Artie's more somebody that just holds it all inside, but he does explode every now and again. And it's due to some of these outbursts that would see Peter see 3 GPs. Now, a GP in Australia is a doctor, so she would see 3 GPs and she would talk about it. And this becomes a point of contention many years later, after this horrific incident that we're leading up to takes place, because they do a coronial inquest and the judge asks these GPs why they didn't report the things that Peter was saying about Darcey Freeman. And they said, well, she told us that lawyers knew about it and the police knew about it already. So this sort of brought up a wider conversation on GPs having better training on how to deal with domestic violence situations like this, who to report it to, how to report it, and just to, I guess make sure that no children are in dangerous situations. So this apartment that Darcey Freeman is renting, Artie is renting, It is cluttered, and I think this is a super important point because this gives you a bit of an idea of his character. So he leaves clothes everywhere. It's like a total mess. It's not there's no garbage in the house. Like he's got a very strict routine when he eats, what he eats. He does the dishes, he does all those things. But another thing that he does, and the news made a huge point of this, and I'm going to sort of debunk it, I think, but they talk about how he would keep all the receipts on any money he spent when he was out with the kids, and he put it in a basket on the kitchen table like it was a massive deal. But people do this all the time when they're going for divorce stuff because it brings down things like child support. They can say, hey, I spent XYZ on the kids when I have them. So it's not like this huge deal. But you can sort of see that, like, in this disorder the house is in disarray, there is some sort of order, I guess. Like, it's odd. But if Artie thought that the couple were going to reconcile and get back together, he was wrong. Those dreams were dashed on June 2008. So in Australia, you have to be separated for a minimum 12 months before you can officially get divorced. And that's exactly what happened in June of 2008. The judge rubber stamped it. It was done. Relationship is over. So from here, Artie knows 100% that it's over. There is no going back. So he, I guess, decides that he's going to pursue his former dream, which was to become a UK resident. And he packs up and he moves over there. Keep in mind, he's got 50-50 custody. So they got divorced with a 50-50 custody split of the kids, which means that the splitting of the assets wouldn't have been too bad. Like if she had full custody, he was looking at probably minimum giving her 70% of the assets, minimum, in Australia. And so a 50-50 split, I can't say what his cut of the assets were. There's a lot more to it than that, but it wouldn't have been too bad. So Artie packs up and he moves to London. And while he's there, he's reconnected with a woman named Elizabeth. Now, Elizabeth is divorced. She has her own kids, and she used to be friends with the couple when they lived in London. So Artie moves over there, and quickly him and Elizabeth get into a relationship. Again, like, Artie is like totally disregarding the fact that he's got a 50-50 split of custody of the kids. Like, how is he going to meet those obligations if he's living in the UK? So you can sort of see, like, although Artie can be extremely calculated and very organised, there's just this level of impulsivity that he has. You know, looking back at his apartment, and you look at sort of his actions now, like, his apartment is like a reflection of what's going on inside his head. That's what I think. So by this stage, Peter finds out about it, and she's not too impressed, obviously, because they've got a 50-50 custody arrangement, and that would have most certainly been reflected in the dividing of the assets too. And now he's just, buggered off to London. So she tells him, like, I'm going to go for primary carer now. Like, you're not even here. And he gets really upset about it. And just the whole thing, the whole vibe of it. Did he do this because he's like, he wants her to, like, be upset that he's in a new relationship? Because that is going to extremes to move to another country. Like, that is crazy. Like, look, I'm moving on. Like, ha ha ha. Like, this didn't affect me, sort of thing. People do that weird stuff all the time. So anyway, like, she tells him, she's already petitioned with the court. He gets very upset about it, and he flies back December of that year. When he arrives back, it's school holidays, and the only child they have in school at this time is Ben. He's 6 years old. So Ben's on school holidays. The other two children are with Peter, and it's now Artie's turn to take the kids on school holiday before we go into the next year and the school starts again. And a big milestone is actually coming up for little Darcey. She's 4 years old. She's going to kindy the next year. So this is a huge deal for the family. So as they roll into January of 2009, Artie gets his three children, and straight away he takes them to his parents, Peter and Norma's house, for the weeks he has them. It's while there that Artie is stressed about the upcoming court, where he might very well lose custody of the children. He's going to lose his 50-50 custody of the children. That's what he's worried about. He frequently talks to Elizabeth, who's back in London, about his concerns, and he's also got some friends in Melbourne that he talks to about, and he tells them how if he loses custody of the kids, he's going to make Peter pay He's going to make Peter pay. He's going to make her life a living hell. So before the family law court can commence, all parties concerned, so that means any family member that's involved with the children, they all need to meet a psychologist. And it's like a group sort of setting. So the psychologist, I guess, wants to see the group dynamics and how people interact with one another. The kids are also there as well. So they've got to go do this first, because this psychologist is going to make a recommendation to the court as to what she feels is in the best interest of the children. So on the first day that they're supposed to meet this psychologist, this is early January, Artie doesn't even bother showing up. He doesn't ring ahead. He doesn't notify anybody. He just doesn't turn up. So they've got to rebook this. And it's on the second time that he does show up, but he shows up late. And while he's there, he interrupts people talking. He tries to overtalk people. He's just really argumentative. And the psychologist can see that it's upsetting the children. And when the children start getting upset, Artie does stop and he comforts the kids, but then he goes right back to doing what he was doing. So in the psychologist's mind, she's thinking, well, it's like he can see the kids are upset, but he can't put the pieces together that they're upset with his actions. Like there's that disconnect. So it's safe to say that Arthur Freeman is not making a very good impression with the psychologist, and it's going to be reflected in the recommendation she makes to the court. It's Wednesday, the 28th of January. This is a day before the kids go back to school, when the family law court proceedings commence, and they end pretty swiftly when the judge revokes Artie's 50-50 custody. So now he's going to, he can basically see his kids every second weekend. So he gets the kids every 2 weeks over the weekend, and he can see the children for a couple of hours every Thursday after school. But here's the thing. Artie was supposed to give the children back that day, and Peter was going to take them to school the next day. But he asked Peter if he can have the kids for one more night, and she agrees. So I think that this whole rigmarole of all of this, I think over time, Peter probably would have given him more custody if he proved himself, because his erratic behaviour was frightening. So she wanted to secure the primary carer position, and it had nothing to do with money because the assets had already been divided up once the divorce had gone through. But nonetheless, Artie is devastated, but Peter doesn't know this because she sees him after the court and he seems like he's in good spirits. He doesn't say anything to her. He's kept it all inside like he always does. So the kids head back to his parents' house, and Artie goes out. He catches up with friends. Now, he had planned a celebration party for winning the court thing because he thought he was going to win. So he's clearly a little bit delusional as well, because he really thought he was going to win and he was going to retain the 50-50 custody. So he planned a celebration, but now, obviously, that celebration, it's not a celebration, it's just a piss up, I guess, because he goes out, has a drink, and he's very down in the dumps, but he's sort of optimistic at the same time because he's telling everybody that he is going to get his 50-50 custody back. He's going to do everything in his power to do that, and people think like he's in pretty high spirits. But it's also at this time, he needs to go home as well because he's got to take the kids to school the next day. He's got a bit of a drive on his hands, so he does leave the pub and he goes home, and he gets home around midnight. Now, when he walks through the door, his father, Peter, is there, and he sees his son, Arthur, and he doesn't look okay. Like, he's in a bit of a trance, but also he'd been drinking, he'd been out, so his dad just thinks, he needs a good night's sleep and everything will be better in the morning, I guess. Now, the next day comes and it's time for Ben and Darcey to go to school. In fact, it's Darcey's first day of school, remember? So this is a huge moment for any kid, for any parent. Like, it's a milestone. And Artie and the kids are going to meet Peter outside the school at 9 a.m. because she wants to be there as well. But Artie's day is going from bad to worse. And it gets pretty bad pretty quickly because he's realised that he has left some of their school uniform back in his unit. So he hadn't packed everything to take to his parents' place that they needed. And Artie had also bought school shoes for little Darcey for her first day of school, and they were too big. So the kids' school uniforms are not right, the shoes aren't right, and he also didn't pack their lunches the night before, and now he's running late. So he's just got to get the kids in the car and go. So uniforms out, shoes are too big, no lunches, and he is stressed. And his dad can see that, and he said, hey, let me come with you, let me go on this drive, and we'll go together. Everything's going to be okay. And he tells his dad, no, it's fine. I'm going to do it. I'll see you when I get back. And he just takes off. Now, it's on the drive in where his sister calls him. And I'm guessing maybe she heard through the grapevine that his morning hadn't started very well. So she just wanted to talk to her brother. That's what I'm guessing. I don't really know. But he's talking to her. And again, he seems like he's in pretty high spirits. So he's bringing up like how he's going to get the 50-50 custody back and rah. And he's starting to approach the Westgate Bridge, and it is 9 a.m. now, so he's already late, and Peter starts calling him, so he's got to take that call. And it's while he's on the Westgate Bridge, he feels like everything is closing in on him. And it's really hot too, remember? It's scorching hot. Just everything, the past couple of years, how his life has gone, it just starts hitting him like a ton of bricks. To the point where Peter's on the phone talking to him, he's not even really hearing it, because it's just every negative thing that's happened the last couple of years is just rotating around his head like a record on a record player. And Peter's there like, where are you? Where are you, Arthur? Where are you? And he just snaps. He grabs the phone, he yells into it, he says, say goodbye to your children, you are never going to see them again, and he hangs up. Peter on the other end is shocked by this, and she keeps trying to call him back, but he's not picking up. So she calls her lawyer and she says, I think we may have a problem here. So the lawyer has been notified that there might be a slight issue with this whole custody thing. Remember, it only just happened. It was the day before. And she gets off the phone to the lawyer. She keeps trying to ring back Artie, and Artie eventually picks up. And again, he tells her, he says, you're never going to see your kids again. And he hangs up. And it's at this point, he's on the Westgate Bridge, and he puts his hazard lights on, and he pulls over to the side. Now, the cars behind him have to come to a stop. Artie, inside the car, he turns to the back, and he says to little Darcey, he says, darling, can you please jump in the front seat? So she takes a little belt off, and she does what her father says, and she gets in the front. Witnesses behind see Arthur get out of the car, get out of the driver's side, walk around to the passenger side, open the door, lifting out what looks to be a little girl. He then walks over to the railing, holds her over it, and drops her. The witnesses are sitting behind watching this all unfold, and they're in shock. They're like, that can't have been a child. That must have been a doll or something. And an old lady gets out of a car, and she walks over to Arthur as he's making his way back to his car. And she says, are you okay? And he doesn't even look at her. He doesn't even register she's there. He just jumps back in his car, turns the hazards off, and drives off. Meanwhile, in the back seat, Ben, the 6-year-old, is saying, Dad, you've got to go back. Darcey, she can't swim. She can't swim. And he's crying at this point. He doesn't realise that the drop is 58 metres. So that's over 190 feet to the water. But his father never answers him, and he just keeps on driving. It's at this same time the two police officers from the start of this story, they make it to the scene. They're under the bridge, and they can see a boat bringing a little body back to shore. And everybody's hoping that it's not an actual little girl. But unfortunately, when the boat gets to shore, their fears are realised very quickly. One of the officers starts performing CPR on the little girl, who looks peacefully asleep at this point. Her lungs are full of water. She's got a little bit of blood trickling out of her nose, and the officer starts performing CPR on her. At the same time, the care flight helicopter is landing in the background. All the dust is getting kicked up and it's flying everywhere. The officer doing the CPR doesn't even register that the helicopter's there, and they're only aware of it when they get a tap on the shoulder from a paramedic who is now going to take over. They work on little Darcey until the point she actually starts to breathe on her own again, and they get her out of there. They get her in the chopper, and they're flying off to the children's hospital. Over the other side of town, Peter's still standing and waiting outside the school, gets a phone call from her lawyer who just heard over the radio that a little girl had been thrown off the Westgate Bridge. So that's how Peter found out about it. Artie, he has driven to the courthouse and he's illegally parked out the front. And he's taken little John out of his baby seat, who's still just a little baby at this point, and he's grabbed little Ben by the hand and he's walked into the courthouse office building where security immediately come up to him because he's looking really bad. Like, he's shaking, he's crying, and he hands the baby to one of the security officers and he's calling for backup. So backup comes, they get the two kids, they put them into a room, and Arthur goes and sits down out the front of a waiting room. He's just sitting there in the chair with his head in his hands, and the police are called. So as the police are racing to the scene to go and see Artie, little John's diaper's being changed in a waiting room. Remember, this is a baby. So that's happening. The police are racing to the scene. They get there. They know what Arthur's done at this point. So when they get there, they see him. He's there shaking, head in his hands, crying. He immediately stands up. He looks at them and says, "Take me away." Over at the children's hospital, the doctors are working on little Darcey, but they know there's nothing that can really be done because she's brain dead. And it would be over the next few days where Peter Barnes would make the heartbreaking decision to turn the life support off. And when she does that, she's cradling little Darcey in her arms while she takes her final breaths. Now, Arthur Freeman's lawyer, when they go to court, tries to claim that he was mentally ill and he doesn't remember anything. And the judge presiding over the case sort of debunked that because of the two phone calls he accepted off Peter where he verbally told her what he was going to do. The fact that he had the wherewithal to put the hazard lights on when he pulled over on the Westgate Bridge showed that he was very much aware of what he was doing. So he would be sentenced in 2011 to 32 years in prison, which means he's eligible for parole in 2041, which I highly doubt he will ever get. I hope not. Since Arthur Freeman's incarceration, he spends most of his time attending the tomato garden inside the prison. So the only people he talks to are tomatoes at this point. Like, nobody, I don't think he has any friends in prison. Nobody visits him, and that's his life. But coincidentally, a few days after Arthur tossed his little daughter off the Westgate Bridge, that dude that went to school with him and went to the same university who played in the NFL, Ben Graham, he made his first Super Bowl appearance for the Arizona Cardinals. They did lose to the Philadelphia Eagles, but he was there, man. But that is the story of Arthur Freeman, the man who threw his little daughter, Darcey Freeman, off the Westgate Bridge in Melbourne. And he's probably one of Australia's worst humans to ever live. He sucks. So, before I forget, special thanks to Think Voice Act, who recommended this story to me. I've opened up the community tab on this channel, so you can go over there and throw me a few cases you want me to cover. Now, I guess let's finish off this video. Let's finish it. But yeah, I really think he blew his top. Like, we've seen a pattern of impulsive behavior from him where he keeps everything under the surface and just explodes. And he didn't get the best night's sleep the night before, so he's just exploded and decided to try and hurt Peter as much as he could. And another thing that come out was that little Darcey loved spending time with her mother as well. And that sort of come out in the custody dispute, that Darcey really wanted to spend more time with her mother anyway. So I really think that he did that as revenge on Peter, on his ex-wife. It's terrible to do that. But anyway, that's the story. If you like the video, like the video. If you didn't, down thumb it. I'll be dropping a new video every week, come rain, hail, or shine. So if you want to subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the channel. And as always, you stay safe out there in internet land.